They laughed when Keanu Reeves walked on stage. Then he shattered Yale's debate tournament. It was a cold morning in New Haven when Keanu Reeves found himself standing outside Yale University's hallowed debate hall. He wore a simple black coat and jeans that looked a bit worn at the edges. He didn't belong here. At least that's what everyone thought when they first saw him. A few students standing by the stairs whispered to each other, their laughter carried away by the winter wind dot inside the grand hall. Students from all over the country were gathering for Yale's annual debate tournament. It was one of the biggest, most prestigious competitions in the country. Only the brightest, the sharpest minds were supposed to stand at the podium. This was a place for those who'd spent years perfecting their words, sharpening their logic like blades. But today, standing at the edge of the marble steps, was a man who had never taken a single formal debate class. Keanu's invitation to this tournament was unexpected. He hadn't asked for it. The truth was, he hadn't even debated in years. He had been invited by a young student named Emily, who worked part-time at the local diner, where Keanu often went for his morning coffee. One rainy night, she found him reading an old book of philosophical essays, and they talked for hours. Emily, a debate captain herself, told him how this tournament changed her life every year. On a whim, she jokingly asked if he'd ever stand on that stage and share his thoughts. She never expected him to say yes. Keanu had always been curious about the art of debate, not the fighting, but the understanding. When he was young, he'd listened to people argue about politics, philosophy, and ethics, but he'd never spoken up. He didn't think his voice mattered. Now, decades later, with the world calling him a Hollywood star, he felt like he had something more important to say. Not about movies, but about people, about kindness, about respect, about how we listen and how we judge each other too quickly. He stepped inside the grand hall. It smelled like polished wood and history. Students with perfectly tailored suits and shiny shoes moved past him, their eyes darting to his old boots. Some tried to hide their smirks, others didn't bother. In the back of the hall, an older professor, Drive, Hamilton, looked over his glasses at Keanu, raising an eyebrow. "Are you here to watch, Doctor?" Hamilton asked, his tone stiff but polite. Keanu gave a soft smile. "No, sir, I'm here to speak." The professor looked him up and down. "You're on the list." Keanu nodded. He handed him a folded piece of paper. "Doctor." Hamilton read it, his brow furrowed. It was Emily's recommendation. He sighed, handed it back. "Very well. You'll speak in the final open round. But be prepared. These students don't go easy on newcomers." Keanu thanked him and sat at the back. He watched round after round. Young students stood under bright lights, voices loud, words sharp. They argued about climate policy, social justice, freedom of speech. Their arguments were full of facts, citations, and technical terms. Keanu admired their passion. But he also noticed something else. Many seemed more interested in winning than understanding. Sometimes the audience would laugh when someone stumbled. Sometimes they clapped when an opponent was cornered, humiliated. As the hours passed, the room grew hotter, the air tense. Emily found him sitting alone during a break. She looked worried. "You don't have to do this, Keanu. They can be cruel." He just shook his head. "It's not about winning, Emily. I want to see if they'll listen, really listen." When it was finally his turn, the room was nearly full. Word had spread that the Hollywood actor was going to speak. Some people in the crowd were excited, hoping for a good show. Others looked annoyed. To them, this was a serious competition. Why was an actor taking up stage time? The judges sat in their high chairs, ready with their pens and score sheets. Keanu walked slowly to the podium. The microphone squealed as he adjusted it. A few students giggled. Someone in the back whispered loudly, "What's he going to do? Recite movie lines?" Keanu cleared his throat. He looked out at the sea of young, expectant faces. For a moment, his mind felt blank. He remembered being a young boy, standing in front of his class, trying to read a poem with trembling hands. He remembered the mocking laughs back then, too. But he also remembered the quiet voice inside him that kept him standing. He breathed in. Then, with a calm voice, he began, "When I was a young man, I used to think debate was about proving you're smarter than someone else," he said. His words were soft, but somehow they carried across the room. "I thought you won when you made the other person look foolish, when you found the one flaw in their argument and tore it open like a wound." He paused. The room was quiet now, the giggles gone. He continued, but as I grew older, I learned something different. I learned that the real win isn't when you defeat someone with your words. It's when you understand someone with your heart. It's when you see the person behind the opinion, the fear behind the anger, the hope behind the pride. Someone in the front row leaned forward, suddenly interested. Keanu looked down at his old boots for a second, then back at the crowd. I've made a career pretending to be other people, but in the spaces between the scenes, I've met people who taught me more than any script ever could. I met a man on a train who told me his life story just because I sat beside him and asked how his day was. I met a woman at a bus stop who cried because no one had asked her how she felt in years. His voice trembled, but he didn't stop. We live in a world that rewards being right, being loud, being quick, but it doesn't reward being kind. It doesn't reward listening. So maybe, just for today, we can try. Instead of arguing, we can understand. Instead of proving each other wrong, we can hold each other up. The room was so silent that even the judges had put down their pens. Keanu took a breath and stepped away from the microphone. He didn't need to say more. The hall seemed smaller now, warmer somehow. The students didn't clap right away. They just sat there, letting the words settle. Then, slowly, they began to applaud. It wasn't thunderous. It wasn't wild. But it was real. Even Dr. Hamilton nodded, a small smile breaking his usual frown. As Keanu walked off the stage, he didn't feel like he had won anything, but he also knew he hadn't lost. Because maybe, just maybe, a few hearts had been cracked open that day. Maybe a few sharp minds would remember that being right is not always enough. And in the back, Emily wiped a tear from her cheek. She knew the debate wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The next morning, the grand hall at Yale felt different. Whispers floated through the corridors about the Hollywood star who had stepped onto their stage and spoken words that no one expected. Some students scoffed, calling it a cheap motivational talk. Others defended him, saying he reminded them why they loved debate in the first place. But no matter what they said, no one could deny that something had shifted. Keanu sat in a small cafe across the street from campus, a cup of black coffee growing cold in front of him. He stared out the window at the ivy-covered walls, thinking about what he had seen in the students' eyes, the pride, the hunger to win, the fear of losing. He knew that same fear. It had chased him through auditions, through lonely nights in hotel rooms, through the moments when he wondered if the world really saw him, or just the characters he played. Emily sat down across from him, her hair pulled back into a messy bun. She looked exhausted but excited. You know what they're saying, right? She asked. Keanu gave her a small smile. That I shouldn't quit my day job, she laughed, shaking her head. Some of them think you embarrassed them, but a lot of them, they want to talk to you. They want to understand what you meant. You did something they couldn't do, Keanu. You made them feel something. He looked at her, grateful for her belief. That wasn't just my speech, Emily. You're the one who opened that door. You saw something in me that I'd forgotten was there. She shrugged. Sometimes people need a mirror to see themselves clearly. Just then, her phone buzzed. She checked it and frowned. Dr. Hamilton wants to see you. He asked me to bring you to his office. Keanu raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? Probably, Emily said with a grin. The walk to Dr. Hamilton's office felt longer than it was. The old professor sat behind a massive oak desk, papers stacked high, sunlight pouring through tall windows. He didn't look up right away when they entered. When he did, his eyes held that same piercing sharpness Keanu had felt the day before. Reeves. Dr. Hamilton began, his tone formal. I have to admit, you caused quite a stir last night. Keanu stood quietly, hands in his pockets. I didn't mean to disrupt anything, sir. Oh, you disrupted plenty, the professor said, leaning back in his chair. This tournament is about argument, about proof and evidence. Your approach was different, heartfelt. I'm not sure that's what debate needs. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady, with respect. Dr. Hamilton, maybe it is what we need. We've been so focused on beating each other. We've forgotten why we even speak. We've forgotten how to listen. Dr. Hamilton looked at her for a long moment, then at Keanu. You've inspired them, Mr. Reeves, but inspiration is fleeting. Are you prepared for what comes next? These students want more than a speech. They want you to teach them something real. Keanu felt his chest tighten. Him, teach. He had spent his life learning from others, from strangers, from books, from quiet moments on park benches, but he'd never stood in front of a classroom. He wasn't a scholar. He wasn't an expert in anything but his own mistakes. I'm not a teacher, Keanu said quietly. I'm just someone who's still learning. Doctor. Hamilton tapped a pencil on the desk. Perhaps that's what makes you the right person. The final round is tomorrow. Some of the students want you to moderate, not as a judge, but as a listener, to ask questions no one else will ask. Emily's eyes widened. That's incredible. Keanu felt a wave of doubt wash over him. Why me? The professor's stern face softened just a little, because they trust you to see past their clever words, to see their hearts. Can you do that? Keanu thought about all the people he'd met on quiet subway rides and late-night walks. The moments when a simple question cracked someone open. The nights when he lay awake, wishing someone had asked him the same questions. I can try, he said at last. When they left the office, Emily practically bounced down the hallway. This is huge, Keanu. You're going to help these students open up. They're going to remember this forever. He couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. But deep inside, fear twisted in his gut. He knew how sharp words could be, how quickly people could turn when you showed them your truth. He knew because he'd lived it. That evening, he wandered the campus alone. He saw students in the library, their heads bent over books, eyes tired but determined. He heard laughter from the dorms, arguments echoing in the common rooms. He saw himself in all of it, the hunger to belong, the fear of being left behind. He sat on a stone bench under a bare tree. The wind bit at his face, but he didn't move. He thought about his mother, who had once told him that his quiet was not weakness, that his gentleness was not an absence of strength. He wondered what she would say now, seeing him here, about to stand in front of young minds who would test him with every question. When he finally stood, his knees stiff, he realized the bench was carved with a simple phrase: truth without kindness is cruelty. He traced the words with his fingers, snow gathering at his feet. The next day would not be about winning an argument. It would be about planting a seed he hoped would grow long after he was gone. As he walked back toward the old brick buildings, lights glowing warm behind frosted windows, he made himself a promise. He would show up. He would listen, and he would remind them, in every word, that the greatest debate we ever have is the one we have with ourselves. The morning of the final debate arrived wrapped in a cold mist. Yale's campus looked like a postcard, ancient stone buildings hidden behind thin layers of fog. Students hurried past each other, heads down, notebooks clutched tight. Inside the great hall, the tension was like a rope pulled so tight it might snap. Keanu stood backstage, listening to the low hum of voices filling the auditorium. He could feel the weight of what he was about to do pressing on his chest. He wasn't here to judge them or to declare who was the smartest in the room. He was here to listen, to see them, not just their polished arguments. Emily stood beside him, holding 2 mugs of tea. Her hand shook a little as she passed him one. They're nervous, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But they want this, Keanu. They want something real. He nodded, staring at the stage lights. He could already see the faces of the students who would step into the spotlight. He imagined the fears they carried, the secrets they'd never admit to each other, the clever words they would hide behind. Drive. Hamilton approached them, his footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. For a moment, Keanu thought the old professor looked tired, like the years of watching young people fight with words had worn grooves in his soul. It's your stage now, Doctor, Hamilton said, his voice heavy with both warning and hope. Ask them questions they'll remember. Don't let them hide behind facts and numbers. Keanu took a deep breath. He stepped out onto the stage. The room fell silent. Rows upon rows of students and guests stared at him, some with curiosity, some with that same skeptical glint in their eyes. The judges sat to the side this time, no scorecards in hand. This round was not about points. It was about truth. Keanu stood at the center, the spotlight warm on his face. He could feel his heart pounding against his ribs. He spoke, his voice calm, but strong enough to reach the back row. Today is not about winning or losing, he began. Today is about seeing each other, really seeing each other. So I'm not going to ask for your best arguments. I'm going to ask for your honesty. A ripple of discomfort moved through the audience. Honesty was harder than facts, harder than rehearsed speeches. The first pair of debaters stepped forward, a young man named Devin and a young woman named Rachel. Both wore sharp suits, their eyes bright but guarded. Keanu smiled at them gently. "Tell me why you chose this debate topic," he said. "Not your official reason, your real reason." Devin shifted on his feet, glancing at the audience. He cleared his throat, ready to deliver a memorized line, but Keanu raised a hand. "No. Speeches, just you." Devin looked down, his shoulders dropping. When he looked up again, his eyes were softer. "I chose it because I'm scared," he said, his voice small at first. "I'm scared that if we don't fix this policy, people like my mom will lose everything. She's already working 3 jobs. If rent goes up again, she won't make it. I thought if I could argue it well enough, maybe I'd feel less powerless." The room was silent. Even Rachel turned to him, her eyes wide. Keanu nodded, then looked at her. "And you?" he asked. Rachel took a deep breath. Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her blazer. "I argued the opposite side because I needed to prove something to my dad. He always told me that feelings don't matter, that if you can't win with logic, you don't deserve to win at all. I guess I wanted to show him I could win, no matter how I felt." Keanu's eyes softened. He thanked them both and told them to sit. He didn't declare a winner. There was none. The next pair came up, and the next, each time. He stripped away the armor of rehearsed lines and cold logic. He asked them about fear, about dreams, about who they were when no one was watching. At first, some resisted, trying to hide behind fancy words. But Keanu's questions were patient, like gentle knocks on a locked door. "What are you really fighting for?" he asked one student who argued fiercely about freedom of speech. "What do you love so much that you break your own rules to protect it?" He asked another who defended strict laws. Little by little, the walls cracked. Students spoke about sick parents, broken friendships, the pressure to be perfect. Some cried. Some laughed through their tears. The audience didn't mock them. This time, they leaned forward, eyes wide, breaths held. Emily watched from the side, her heart full. She knew this was bigger than a debate. This was healing for students who had been told to sharpen their minds but dull their hearts. After the last pair finished, Keanu stepped forward again. His own voice shook now, raw from hours of holding space for other people's truths. "Do you see now?" he asked them. "This is debate, not just words that win trophies, but words that open doors, words that connect us even when we disagree. You are more than your arguments. You are human. Don't forget that." For a moment, the room stayed perfectly still. Then, one by one, people stood up. The applause began, soft at first, then stronger. Not the roaring cheer of a crowd celebrating a champion, but the steady, grateful sound of people who had been reminded what it meant to feel. Keanu felt a tear slide down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. Backstage, Dr. Hamilton approached him again, his voice lower this time. "I've judged debates for 30 years, he said. "I've seen winners come and go, but today, you gave them something none of us could. You gave them themselves." Keanu shook the professor's hand, his heart so full it ached. He knew this was not the end. These students would go out into the world, into courtrooms, boardrooms, classrooms, and they would carry this memory. With them, maybe they would listen more closely, maybe they would speak more kindly. As he left the hall with Emily, snow began to fall, soft and gentle, covering the campus like a promise. The days after the final round felt like a quiet echo that no one quite knew how to fill. Students walked through Yale's campus with different eyes now. They greeted each other with nods, sometimes small smiles, as if they carried an unspoken bond, a reminder that they'd all been cracked open and stitched together in the same hall. For Keanu, it was not a return to normal. Every morning, he woke up with memories of the students' voices, their truths, their fears, the way their words hung in the air like fragile lanterns. Sometimes, he worried that it was just a moment, a fleeting spark that would burn out once the cold of the real world settled in. But he was wrong. One night, Emily called him. She sounded breathless, half whispering as if afraid to break the moment she was witnessing. "Keanu, you need to come to the library," she said. Now, he pulled on his old coat and stepped out into the freezing night, his breath a ghost in the dark. The library glowed like a beacon at the top of the hill. When he pushed open the heavy wooden doors, he stopped in the threshold, stunned. Inside, students were gathered around tables, some with notebooks open, others with no papers at all. Just cups of tea and circles of conversation. Devin was there, leaning forward, listening to a shy freshman who seemed nervous to meet his eyes. Rachel sat cross-legged on the floor with 3 others, her laughter ringing out every now and then. They weren't debating. They were talking, listening, asking the kind of questions Keanu had asked them on stage. Emily appeared beside him, a soft grin on her face. They wanted to keep going, she said, so we started a group. Every night, anyone can come. No judges, no scores, just questions and honesty. Keanu felt his throat tighten. And you? She shrugged. I thought I was good at debating, but I want to be better at this, better at hearing people, better at being human. He watched the room for a long time. Some students spotted him and waved him over. He hesitated, but Emily nudged him forward. He sat with Devin's circle. The conversation paused as they all looked at him, waiting. Devin cleared his throat. Keanu, do you think it's possible to really change? I mean, we're taught to be strong, sharp, competitive. Do you think we can learn to be softer without getting eaten alive? The question sank into the space between them. Keanu leaned back, staring at the ceiling, where the warm light made shadows dance across the old stone. I think being soft is the bravest thing, he said quietly. Anyone can swing a sword with sharp words, but to stand there unarmed, to see someone fully and not flinch, that's strength too. You don't lose your edge. You just know when not to cut. The group fell silent. Then Devin nodded, looking like a weight had shifted off his shoulders. Someone else asked about fear, how to speak up when you feel like your truth is too small. Someone else asked about shame, how to admit you don't know everything when you're supposed to be smart. Keanu didn't have all the answers. He never claimed to, but he listened. He offered pieces of his own story, about losing people he loved, about being called slow, about the years when he felt like his voice wasn't enough. In the middle of the night, after most students had gone to sleep, Keanu and Emily walked back across campus. Snowflakes drifted down, catching in Emily's hair like tiny stars. You're not leaving yet, are you? She asked, almost too casually. Keanu smiled at the ground. I have a life back home, movies, people I promised to see, but I don't think this is over. Not for me. She grabbed his arm, stopping him under a streetlight. What if you stayed? What if you came back next semester? We could start something real. A new kind of club, not just debate. Real conversations, real questions. He looked into her eyes, saw the fierce hope burning there. They'll laugh, you know, he said softly. Some people will think it's ridiculous. An actor teaching students how to listen. Let them laugh, she said, her grin wide. We'll keep asking the questions anyway. He didn't give her an answer right away. Instead, he promised to think about it. That night, in his tiny rented room, he sat at the window and watched the snow cover the world in white silence. He wondered if his mother had been right, that sometimes the simplest things were the hardest to do. The next morning, Keanu met Dr. Hamilton for breakfast in a small diner off campus. The old professor looked different in the soft light, less intimidating, more human. Students are talking, Dr. Hamilton said, stirring sugar into his coffee. Faculty are talking too. They think you've started something we can't control. Keanu sipped his coffee, letting the warmth spread through his cold hands. Is that bad, Doctor? Hamilton let out a low chuckle. Depends who you ask. Some people like control, but me, I think this place needed a little shaking up. They sat in silence for a while, the clink of spoons and quiet chatter of the diner filling the space. Then Dr. Hamilton looked at him, his eyes softer than before. You could do this, you know. Stay. Help them build this. Whatever it is, it won't be easy. It might not even last forever. But it would matter. Keanu felt something in his chest shift, like a door opening to a hallway he'd never walked down. The thought scared him, but in a good way, the way new things always do. As he left the diner, he spotted a flyer on a lamppost. It was for a student event, handwritten in bold marker, open circle. Come as you are. Say what you feel. No judges, no scores. Beneath it was a single line, inspired by a man who reminded us that words can heal. Keanu smiled. He didn't need to see his name. He already knew. He pulled his coat tie around him and stepped back into the cold, feeling like maybe, just maybe, his greatest role had nothing to do with pretending to be someone else. The weeks that followed felt like a quiet revolution. Word of Keanu's final debate spread far beyond Yale's ivy walls. It showed up in local papers, student blogs, even small video clips online. Shaky phone footage of him standing on that old wooden stage, asking questions that made sharp-tongued. Students dropped their armor. Some people mocked it, saying it was just a feel-good stunt. But others were moved. Students from other universities started sending messages to Emily's inbox. They asked how they could create their own open circles. They asked how they could bring kindness back into spaces that had grown cold with competition. Keanu stayed longer than he planned. Every day he told himself he would leave tomorrow, but every tomorrow he found another reason to stay. He met with small groups in dusty classrooms, old libraries, sometimes just under trees on the quad when the weather was kind. Each circle felt like planting seeds, slow, quiet work that no one would ever see on the evening news. One night, Emily and Keanu sat on the library steps, huddled under a single blanket. The moon was bright enough to cast shadows on the snow. "You've become a rumor," Emily said with a soft laugh. "The students call you the listener. They think you can see inside their heads." Keanu chuckled, shaking his head. "I can't see inside anyone. I just wait long enough for them to show me." He paused, tracing shapes on the stone step with his finger. "When I was younger, I thought the only way to be heard was to speak louder than everyone else. But now, I think the real power is in silence, in what people share when they feel safe enough." Emily leaned her head on his shoulder. "It's strange, isn't it, that an actor known for being quiet would come here and change the loudest room on campus?" Keanu looked up at the moon. "I didn't change it. They did. They were ready, but not everyone was ready." News of the open circles and the listening sessions reached parts of the faculty who were less forgiving than Dr. Hamilton. Some professors thought it was a distraction, that the students were wasting precious time that should be spent sharpening their debate skills, learning to crush opponents in the real world. One afternoon, Keanu found himself sitting in a small conference room. 3 senior faculty members sat across from him. They wore crisp suits and polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Reeves, one of them began, her voice calm but sharp around the edges. "We respect your intentions, but this is Yale. Our debate program is the best because it demands excellence. These circles you're hosting, they are softening the students. They're making them vulnerable." Keanu listened, his hands folded in his lap. Another professor jumped in. "Vulnerability is a weakness in a courtroom, in politics, in business. Our students need to learn how to win, not how to feel." Keanu took a deep breath. He looked each of them in the eye, his voice steady. "I understand why you think that, but if they don't know how to feel, then what are they really fighting for? If you don't see the person on the other side, all you have is words that cut. No one heals. No one grows." The first professor frowned. "That sounds lovely, Mr. Reeves, but we can't run a program on poetry. We have donors, expectations." Keanu knew then that not everyone could be reached with a single conversation. Some walls were built brick by brick over years of fear and pride. They wouldn't come down overnight. When he stepped outside into the cold, he felt the sting of doubt. Was he helping? Or was he just a disruption? Was this circle a spark that would die as soon as he left? That night, he found Emily pacing outside the old debate hall. Her cheeks were red from the cold, her breath quick and shaky. "They're going to shut us down," she said, her voice breaking. "They're talking about making the open circle unofficial. No rooms to meet in, no support." Keanu put a hand on her shoulder. "Then we meet outside, on the steps, under the trees. It doesn't matter if they take the walls away. The circle isn't the room, Emily. It's the people." Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded. "What if they stop coming?" Keanu thought about all the people he'd met in his life. People who opened up on trains, in diners, on lonely benches. People who just needed someone to ask, "How are you, really?" If even one person shows up. He said softly, "That's enough. You won't be alone. You have me, for as long as I could be here." But the thought of leaving started to pull at him more strongly. He had movies lined up, people depending on him back in a world that moved fast for slow, honest words. He found himself standing alone on the debate hall stage late one night. The empty seats stretched out before him, shadows clinging to every corner. He closed his eyes and pictured the faces of the students, Devin's trembling voice, Rachel's nervous smile, the countless others who cracked open their hearts under these lights. He whispered to the empty room, "What do I do now?" In the silence, an answer came, not as words but as a feeling. He couldn't carry this alone. He wasn't supposed to. The next day, he sat down with Emily and Dr. Hamilton in the small cafe that had become their makeshift headquarters. The old professor sipped his tea, his eyes tired but alive with something new. "We need a plan," Dr. Hamilton said. "Something that doesn't rely on just you, Keanu. If you leave, this dies. If you stay, you lose yourself. That's not balance." Emily leaned forward. "What if we train more listeners? Not teachers, not judges, just people who know how to hold space. We make it a real part of the debate program, not a replacement, but a balance." Keanu felt hope spark in his chest again. What if it spreads? Other schools, other circles, people talking to people, listening like it matters. Dr. Hamilton smiled for the first time in days. "Then maybe we've done something good after all." That night, the open circle met under the stars. No walls, no judges, no rules. Just students sitting close together on old blankets, sharing stories, asking questions that had no easy answers. Keanu sat among them, his heart full, but restless. He knew his time here was almost up, but the seeds were planted. He could feel them, tiny sparks of warmth that would keep glowing long after he was gone. He looked at Emily across the circle. She met his eyes and nodded, as if to say, "It's working, it's worth it." In the darkness, their voices rose and fell like a soft song, and for the first time in a long while, Keanu felt like he wasn't acting at all. He was exactly where he was meant to be. The last morning came sooner than anyone expected. It was quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you listen harder to every sound. Footsteps on old stone, the whisper of wind through bare trees, the distant echo of laughter drifting from open dorm windows. Keanu packed his small bag in a room he had rented just off campus. It looked almost the same as the first night he arrived. A single bed, a chair by the window, a stack of books he'd collected from the student library. But it felt different now, like every corner was filled with words he hadn't said yet, questions still hanging in the air. He looked out the window and saw the library steps where the students had first gathered, the place where the open circle was born. He thought of the way they had looked at each other that night, awkward, scared, then brave. So brave. There was a knock on his door. Emily stood there, wrapped in a long scarf that made her look younger somehow. Her eyes were red, but her smile was strong. "So," she said, stepping inside. "This is it." Keanu nodded. "I have to go back. For now." She sat on the edge of his bed, her hands fidgeting with the scarf ends. "I thought you would always be here. It felt safe knowing you'd walk in any night and sit with us." Keanu sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I can't stay forever, Emily, but you don't need me to." She opened her mouth to argue, but he shook his head gently. "You've always been the one, Emily. It was your heart that started this, your questions, your hope. I was just a spark. You're the fire." She sniffed, laughing at herself for crying. "You sound like one of your movies." Keanu chuckled. "Maybe, but it's true." He handed her a small, folded piece of paper. On it were 3 simple rules he'd written the night before. 1. Listen first. 2. Ask better questions. 3. Hold the space, even when it hurts. "Teach this," he said. "Don't try to make it perfect. Don't try to make everyone understand. Just keep the circle open. It will grow if it's meant to." Outside, a handful of students were waiting on the steps, bundled up in coats and scarves. They didn't say much when they saw him walk out with Emily. Some hugged him tight. Others just held his hand a moment longer than needed. Devin, who once trembled behind fancy words, now stood tall, his eyes shining with quiet confidence. Rachel pressed a letter into his palm. He could feel it trembling even through her gloves. "Promise you'll read it," she said. "I will." He promised. Drive. Hamilton was there too, standing a little apart from the group. The old professor stepped forward, his eyes warm. "You did well, Mr. Reeves," he said softly. "Better than any trophy." Keanu smiled. "So did you, Professor? You let them see what's possible?" He looked around one last time. The old buildings, the snow gathering in corners, the benches under bare trees, all of it felt like a dream he didn't want to wake from. He wondered how many more voices would echo through these halls, because he'd asked one simple question, "What's behind your words?" When he turned to leave, Emily grabbed his hand. "Promise me something, anything. Promise you'll keep doing this, wherever you go. Don't let the movies take it away from you." Keanu looked her in the eyes. "I promise." His footsteps crunched over fresh snow as he walked down the steps. He didn't look back, not because he didn't care, but because he knew some things should never be looked at like a goodbye. It wasn't goodbye. It was a door left open. The train station was quiet when he arrived. He found an empty bench on the platform, sat down, and opened Rachel's letter. Her handwriting was messy but strong. "Thank you for listening when no one else did. Thank you for showing me I am more than my arguments. Thank you for reminding me that being kind is brave. I hope you find more circles wherever you go." As the train pulled in, Keanu folded the letter carefully, tucking it into the inside pocket of his coat. He stepped on board, found a seat by the window, and watched the campus fade into the distance. He didn't know where his next circle would be. Maybe it would be on a movie set, or on a crowded train, or with strangers in a tiny cafe. Maybe it would be with someone sitting alone, waiting for someone to ask them how they really feel. But he knew this for certain. They had laughed when he walked on stage. They didn't laugh anymore, and somewhere in those old stone halls, young voices would keep asking questions that made the world softer, kinder, braver. He closed his eyes as the train rumbled on, carrying him into the next story he would help someone tell.